close your eyes for a minute. Close your eyes, and just imagine. Imagine that you can see a ladder standing vertically. And then imagine that that ladder has only 3 rungs. Imagine that kind of a ladder. If you were going to climb an electric pole, if you are going to climb anything serious, and you have a ladder that has only 3 rungs, would you have the confidence to climb, to use that ladder? Just imagine. So tonight I am taking the power of agreement to another level. And I want to look at it in the eyes of Plato. Plato was a philosopher several years ago. And for Plato, he described marriage as a ladder. And his description of marriage is something I can tell you we can learn something tangible from. So Plato described marriage as a ladder. He said that the 2 rungs, vertical stands of the ladder represents the man and the woman. Plato said that each rung, horizontal rung of the ladder represents those things that bring the man and the woman together, those things that keep them glued together, those things that form the basis of their union. In Plato's description, Plato said that almost all of the times, the first rung of the ladder in any relationship is physical attraction. And then from physical attraction, it can build up to other areas of mutual interest. Plato said that the more the number, the items that form the basis of interest for both partners, the more it is hoped that that union will survive, that that union will last, that that union will be blissful, will be an incredible experience. Plato said that the fewer, the lesser. Plato said that at the beginning of the ladder, there is physical attraction. At the end of the ladder, there is divine love. He described it as sacrificial, selfless love at the rung of the ladder. As a relationship continues to grow and continues to gain form and structure, it will continue to get to that point where the basis of that relationship is selfless, sacrificial love. Plato said that the more a marital union thrives on sacrificial, selfless love, the more that marriage will fulfill its purpose. If you ask me, I would say that Plato's concept of marriage is not just amazing, it is in tandem with Jesus's conceptualization of marriage, and it is in tandem with God's conceptualization. As a matter of fact, Plato has drawn from the mind of God in presenting that concept to us. Sadly, for many unions, physical attraction forms the main and the primary basis. The challenge with physical attraction is that it's okay that the relationship starts from attraction. As a matter of fact, without attraction, there really will be no marriage. Without attraction, there attraction is the magical unit, the point that creates the interest, that forms the attraction, that brings people together. Without it, most people will not be interested in the marital relationship. However, it is not enough that that is the only basis. It is insufficient that that is the only basis. For some people, that's all that matters. They're physically attracted to this person. They have found love, what a lot of people define as love is physical attraction. It is why again and again we try to say that love is more than physical attraction. Love includes physical attraction. Love includes romantic, feelings and tendencies. But that is not only what there is in love. And so if our definition and conceptualization of love stops at physical attraction, stop at romantic affinities, then we are going to find a situation where, because romantic affinities are very transient, they are very temporary, they are very happening conditioned, they are very circumstance driven, the times will always come when we don't feel like it. It is the other rungs in the ladder that will sustain the relationship. Physical attraction is so temporary that what attracted you to a woman can change as soon as she has a first baby. What attracted you to a man can change by reason of the acts of God in law, what we call accidents, natural phenomenon, all kinds of things. Just one accident can change the narrative about what attracts you to a person. So while physical attraction is okay, is amazing, is a good starting point, it will not be enough. It will not be sufficient to sustain a marital union. Looking at it from Plato's perspective, the more the things that constitute what you want to call mutual interest, the more the number of mutual interests that bring two people together, the more it is hoped, it is believed that that union, that relationship is going to thrive. So we must go beyond physical attraction. I know she's beautiful. I know he looks amazing. He's tall, he's dark, he's handsome. I'm saying it's a good place to start. But now that you have started, it's time to sit down and look at other areas of mutual interest, mutual attractions, what I call goals and aspirations compatibility. That is so critical. That is so important. So go back memory lane from where I started. I said, imagine that you are going to use a ladder and it has only 3 rungs. You can tell that before long you're going to fall from that ladder. So if you're in a relationship, whether you're dating, whether you're courting, whether you're in an engagement, whatever stage you are in your relationship dynamics, it is important the number of things that bring you guys together. It is important that your core values are in alignment, bringing you guys together. It is important that there are sufficient leisure activities bringing you guys together. It is important that there are sufficient goals in life, in your future, that is bringing you guys together. If you have more than enough items bringing you guys together, then I can guarantee that the future of that relationship is predictable. Predictability is key for me. And you see, the more the number of mutual interests, the more the number of basis for attraction that brings you guys together, the more it is likely that over a period of time, because of connectivity, because of friendship, because of mental connection, emotional connection, spiritual connection, physical connection, a time comes when that relationship, you guys are going to dissolve one into the other to the point where there almost is no difference. You enter that dimension where selflessness, the God kind of love, that is not defined by physical attraction, the God kind of love that is not defined by whether you do for me or whether you don't do for me, the God kind of love that is completely selfless. And the truth is, until our relationships, our unions graduate to that level, to that frequency, where unconditional love becomes the pivot, the driving force, then we are still at the place where the future of our relationships might not be predictable. It is the reason why we must, like I said, sit down to come to an understanding, sit down to define our expectations. Like I've always said, unmet expectations, they are the biggest challenge of marriages. Unmet expectations. Nobody walks out of a relationship if their expectations were met. But the challenge for me is, how do you go into a union in which your expectations are not clearly defined? How do you assume that your partner has a clear understanding of what your expectations are? We're not mind readers. We're limited by the physical container, our bodies, into which we are trapped. So we do not have the capacity to read minds. We do not have the capacity to know what expectations you have, to think that because I'm a pastor, that I will act in a certain way means you don't understand. You have a poor conceptualization of the dynamics of the way human beings function. You don't assume that because of the title a person wears, that they will act in a certain way. You don't assume that because of the person says he belongs to the Christian faith, he will act in a certain way. Let me shock you. We live in a day and a time, wherein people are selective in what they believe. Even when they say they're Christians, they're selective about what they believe in the Holy Book. Even when they say they're Muslims, they're selective about what they believe in the Holy Book. So you don't want to assume that because they claim to belong to a certain faith. I don't even care that they worship with you in the same parish. People are selective in what they believe. In fact, I read a scripture, I think it's in Timothy, 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 1 to 6, somewhere along the line between 1 and 10 and 12. It talks about people having a form of knowledge but denying the power thereof. So you don't want to assume. You want to sit down with people and hold conversations and actually come to the place of specific agreements. There has to be a certain degree of clarity when it comes to expectations. Because at the end of the day, a lot of the times, it's not just that unmet expectations is the major bane of marriages. It's that oftentimes, most of the expectations we have about marriages and most of the expectations that we have about our partners are unrealistic expectations. A lot of us have expectations about people from people that those people do not have the character, they don't have the competence, they don't have the capacity, they don't have what it takes to be able to deliver on our expectations. You just assume, oh, that guy is a deacon, is a choir master, is a Sunday school teacher, is a prophet, is an apostle. So you assume. Assumption is the mother of frustration. You don't want to assume that people will act in a certain way. You don't want to assume that people will do certain things. You want to be express in communicating to them what those expectations are, you want to be sure that they have the capacity, that they're not impeded by a history of pain and of trauma and of addictions and of abuse and of damage. A lot of people are so damaged that they've not attended to what it is that they are being bedeviled about. A lot of people are dealing with a lot of issues that it doesn't make sense that you are expecting them to act in certain ways that defines their weakness. And you can't come into marital relationships oblivious of the fact that that is what we call human weaknesses. If a person has an area in their lives in which they are, it's what the Bible calls the sins that and the weights that easily beset us. If somebody is weak in an area, it will not matter what your expectations are towards them. If they're incapable of fulfilling those expectations, they are incapable. That's the truth. If they can't, if they don't have the capacity to, if they lack the competence, if they lack the experience, if they lack the exposure, what it is not possible for them to do, if you demand from them and insist that they do, without the accruable patience to allow for them to develop themselves to gain that capacity to do, then you are going to mess with yourself. Then you are going to put yourself in a very, very difficult situation. So it is the reason why I am going to recommend that there are key areas that we need to have agreement on. There are key areas that we need to begin to take the time to hold conversations about. For example, you guys might need to sit down. Don't forget where we started from. Except two people cannot work together except they be in agreement. And sometimes we might need to take the time to look at what areas do we need to hold conversations about. We probably might need to sit down and discuss sexual expectations and come to an agreement. We probably might need to sit down and discuss our spiritual beliefs. Now listen to this. Marriage will place incredible demand for compromise on your life. What I mean is this. Again and again, you will have to compromise in marriage if marriage is going to work. Again and again, you're not going to have your way. Again and again, things are not going to turn out the way you expect. Again and again, things will not fit into your mold. It will not fit into your upbringing. There really is nothing about what we call, what's that? Compatibility. Yes, there's an element of compatibility in the entire stuff. But listen to this. Compatibility cannot deny the fact that we are different. We cannot, in the name of compatibility, fail to come to terms with the fact that no two people are the same. No two people are going to think alike. No two people are going to talk alike. No two people are going to behave alike. No two people's preferences are going to be alike. No two people's choice as to color, choice as to food, choice as to meals, choice as to how we relax, choice as to leisure, choice as to career, choice as to whatever. No two people's preferences are going to be the same. To that extent, marriage will put you in a place where you will have to make unbelievable compromises. As much as that is the truth, it should not negate the fact that there are still certain aspects of your life where you cannot compromise. They are non-negotiable. There are areas in your life where you won't give it up for nobody, no matter who they are. If that is the truth, and if you don't want marriage to spring up heartbreaking, incredible pain and surprises, then you want to sit down and hold conversations as it relates to what your non-negotiables are. Because at the end of the day, if you don't define in the clearest terms what those non-negotiables are, when you come into the marital space, your partner is going to mess with your boundaries. Because probably you didn't put them through as to what those boundaries are. Or sometimes some people are not just sincere. They're not listening to what you're talking about. They just want to have you as a spouse. They just want you by all means. And then they ignore what it is you're talking about. And then now that you've said I do, they're insisting on certain things. The benefit is that when certain things are clearly defined and agreed upon, it is the reason why I'm a subscriber. Unrepentant subscriber for prenuptials, so that, and when I'm talking about prenuptials, I'm looking at it, maybe I need to start looking for another word for what I have in mind. I'm looking at it beyond how do we share our estate in case the marriage is dissolved. No, I'm looking at it beyond that. When I talk about prenuptials, I'm talking about the fact that people need to sit down and agree, and if possible, document what it is they are talking about, so that when people begin to act inconsistent with what has been agreed, there is a document to show. And then whatever decision you take at that point, I believe you will be justified because you are acting based on what was agreed. This is so important because of the way and manner that human behavior has turned out to be in our day and time. Talking about Jesus, I think it was in John chapter 2, the last 3 verses, talking about man. The Bible says Jesus did not give himself to man because he knew what was in man. The reason we do a lot of things in the name of love, we do a lot of things in the name of relationships without taking the time to discuss in as clear as possible details with human beings, is that I think a lot of us have failed to understand the frailty, the architecture, the limitations, the incompetencies, and the insincerities of human beings that are trapped in this human body. When you understand what human beings are like, you want to be intentional. You are not being, and of course, when you want to be this intentional with details, a lot of people who have ulterior motive will misinterpret your intentions. But my challenge to them is, if your hands are clean, why are you afraid of agreements? If your hands are clean, why are you afraid of sitting down to hold these conversations? If your conscience is clear, then you're not afraid of nothing. You come to the table and let's hold conversations about what we intend, what is our financial management strategy. We got to talk about it. What are our sexual expectations? We got to talk about it. What are our spiritual beliefs that are non-negotiable? We got to talk about it. What will be our strategy for managing family? Now talking about extended family, talking about siblings, talking about children, talking about parents. What will be our strategy for managing friends? We got to sit down and talk about them. What are our goals? What are our aspirations? And to what extent are they symbiotic? Are they mutually inclusive? We want to sit down and talk about the extent to which we are compatible emotionally. Because you see, sometimes I may like football, you may not like football. But because you are going to sit down to watch this football with me, you are willing to sit down with me, enjoy the football because of who it is that you're watching the football with. That emotional connection, that mental connection. I may not like Indian movies. I may not like Asian movies, but she likes Asian movies. I am able to sit down and watch those movies with her, not because I like the movies, but because I like the person with whom I am watching the movies. It will only be a question of time. Because I like the person with whom I'm watching the movies, I will fall in love with the movies. So it is the reason why you want to be sure that there is connection emotionally. Because when there is connection A lot of the things we talk about incompatibility, we talk about irreconcilable differences, those are kids talking. Trust me, they're kids. Because the challenge, the reason our marriages are crashing is not because of incompatibility. Nobody is compatible with nobody. It's because of inflexibility. We have refused. We have failed to be flexible. We have failed to compromise where we need to compromise. We have failed to clearly define boundaries and non-negotiables. And so now we're saying we are incompatible. At the end of the day, if we sit down to put these things in their proper perspectives, everybody knows where it is you got to do your own adjustments. It is why the Bible says in Romans chapter 12, verse 10, compete, outdo one another in honor. So now we are in competition I want to love you more than you can love me. I want to care more than you can care. I'm intentional with the fact that the last time we had some misunderstandings, you were the one that apologized. The other time you were the one that apologized. And so this time, whether I was right or wrong, I want to also apologize. So now I'm in competition with you so that at every point in time, I want to make sure you are loved. That's amazing. Trust me. We want to sit down and talk about our marriage expectations. To what extent are our visions compatible? In my subsequent broadcast, I'm going to look at vision, marital vision, family vision. To what extent are our visions and expectations compatible? What are we looking at when it comes to relationship roles? Are we looking at an egalitarian family, or are we looking at traditional family that is leadership is basically positional? So at the end of the day, in a traditional setting, all cooking, home chores, domestic chores is the woman's responsibility, no matter whether she is also the one contributing financially, whether she's even the one that is providing fundamentally because of maybe a financial situation with the guy. In a traditional setting, it doesn't matter. She has to take care of them kids. She has to take care of them food. She has to do the cooking. She has to take care of home chores. She has to do everything, even if she's at the point of death. Or do we look at an egalitarian system where the best part time takes the lead? Who knows how to navigate around what it is that we're dealing with takes the lead in a situation where there is a 360-degree leadership, where home chores are distributed evenly based on who does what better, who has strength, who has capacity. We want to sit down and talk about parenting expectations. I'm taking the time to itemize some of the areas you just have to sit down to talk about. No assumptions. And if you're going into a relationship, if you're already on the pathway of going to say I do, if your wedding dates have been fixed and you've not talked about these things, if anything goes wrong, don't blame the devil. He's not omniscient. He's not omnipotent. He's not capable of doing too many of the things we glorify him to have done. He's not. That's the truth. So the key word here is that you got to sit down and talk about what your marital expectations are, what your relationship roles are, what are your parenting expectations. What have you put in place as to your conflict management, conflict resolution styles? In my subsequent broadcast, I'm going to take the time to look at conflict resolution styles. You want to talk about what is it? How do we resolve conflicts? How do we resolve disagreements? Who does what? How does the other person respond? You want to talk about your commitment expectations. You want to talk about what leisure activities people are interested in. You want to talk about a lot of, there's so much to talk about. But if you've talked about these basics, and both of you have an understanding, and for goodness sake, marriage is business. We should stop ignoring the business aspect of marriage. There's the romantic aspect of marriage. There's the financial aspect of marriage. We must look at marriage as a comprehensive conglomeration. It's a comprehensive component that has different aspects that we need to begin to look at it. We must come to that place where, if it is possible, sometimes we need to take note, record what it is we're talking about. We are humans. We are limited. We can forget that we said something. We can miss out a point. we can omit. You go to a meeting, and when minutes are read out, you see people say, no, that's not how we put it. That's not what we said. This is how we said it. Oh, you omitted to catch what XYZ said. We're human beings. We're prone to limitations. Sometimes when we structure things a certain way, it helps us. Even people who are prone to, who have a tendency to be negative in their attitudes, when they become conscious of agreement, existing agreement, documented agreements, there's a sense in which it makes them act responsibly. I think that we might be helping, doing ourselves a lot more good if we take the time to be intentional with these things. There is a way. If your relationship is not going to turn out negatively the way the relationships that are failing are turning out, there are things you must begin to do intentionally. You must stop leaving things to chance. No more trial by error. You must become intentional. And I believe that if you go to work to get it right, it'll turn out right.